What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run 2 programs called Inner Knowing and Good Life Designed for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals on tools and frameworks for creating an intuitive practice and for creating self-mastery in their life. As someone who's helped countless entrepreneurs open doors of possibility that they never thought existed, I've seen these strategies transform people's lives. The best part is that you'll 10x your output, unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly to overcome your limiting beliefs. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition, and set a new framework on how to live your best life. And you'll get access to guided meditations that I have personally created that are not available anywhere else. We'll create a new self-concept that you can practice moving forward. This method is so effective that even if you don't have a lot of time or if you think you're not ready for a change, these frameworks and methodologies will still work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can also check out what some of the previous clients had to say about our time together. It's first come, first serve, and I hope to see you there. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, spirituality, and consciousness. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Graham Hill, one of Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business. Graham is a sought after to clearly communicate how we can create a wealthier, greener, and happier planet. And he's presented at many conferences, including 2 main stage TED Talks that have been viewed more than 11 million times. In 2004, he created the website treehugger.com, which was the most trafficked green site for years, and it sold to Discovery and has had several billions of page views. And then he's now working on the Carbonauts, which we'll talk about on the show, and he's building that into a global movement, working with really incredible companies like AT&T and Amazon. All right, so welcome to the show, Graham.
Thanks so much for having me.
So to kick it off, Graham, why is living sustainably so important?
Well, I think the definition of sustainable is just something that goes on. So if we want our species to survive, we need to be sustainable. And we have, for most of our time on Earth, been living in a way that is sustainable. But the last couple hundred years have seemed to have headed in a different direction. And so, living sustainably is just living in a way that will allow us to stay living and keep moving forward. And I would say I also like to include as many other species in that as possible.
Yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit about your TED Talk. You speak about why less stuff leads to more happiness. This is kind of, in alignment with the sustainability piece. But can you say more about why you chose that topic and also what the 3 rules are for editing your life?
So that was a focus for about a decade. I basically focused on small living, which means living with sort of less stuff, but also ideally less space, just with the basic idea that doing so, we sort of confused happiness with stuff, having a lot of stuff, having a lot of space. And if you look at the statistics, it clearly doesn't work that way. And so we just think that if you apply design, a little behavior change, that you can live a smaller life, less space and less stuff, and it's a happier life. And also one that is better for the environment, and also one that saves you some money. And so I did a lot of focus on just making small, really smart, transforming spaces, apartments and houses, so that you could just have a nice edited life with all the benefits that come with that. It was a lot of fun, and I think it there's clearly a desire in our society for that, and you could tell that because, not to pat ourselves on the back, but one of those talks got like 6 million views. I wrote an op-ed for the Times. It was like the fourth most popular for the year. It's just like it seems very clear that people are really there's an inherent sort of feeling of, wow, just too much stuff. And so it's just focused on that. And so I can't remember what my main rules are, but I wrote down a couple. I'd probably approach small living for, like, if you're trying to bring something into your life, first of all, do you really need it? Second of all, can you rent or borrow it if it's not something that you use that often? And then ultimately, if you have to buy it or you feel like you have to buy it, then I might look first. I might put it off for a little while because you might find that ultimately you didn't need it. You might change your mind. I would also ask yourself if you really love it and make sure that you do. And then I would look for things that are timelessly styled so they don't go out of fashion. Ideally multifunctional, so it can do multiple things, repairable, and really durable. So we're at Life Edited. That's what it was called. We weren't about not having any stuff. Never were proposing that we sort of went back to the loincloth. Obviously, we're going to have stuff in our lives, but you just want to have less stuff and better stuff, and really try to be focused on sort of quality stuff that is better for the environment, better for ideally for the people that make the stuff, and just stuff that lasts a long time, so you can have a pleasurable experience, one that makes sense financially, and just sort of an efficient way of living. So I think those are some of the rules I would apply.
That's so great, Graham. I love the thoughtfulness in the decision to buy something, because I think a lot of us buy things sort of, unconsciously or without any kind of thoughtfulness. I mean, myself included. I'll raise my hand here.
It's very much. Listen, we Madison Avenue got very good and showed us how to create this desire for stuff. And it helped us sort of think that happiness comes via buying things. And then big box stores and online shopping and all the massive amounts of convenience. And then the interweaving of buying opportunities at every turn has made it such that it's really it's really easy for you to end up buying stuff. It's often a little harder to get it out of your life, as anyone who has moved and has tried to sort of give stuff away, sell stuff, move stuff. It's a big hassle, but our whole society is really designed around making it very easy to bring a lot of stuff into our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
I realized a couple of years ago, after looking at this for many years, that in a way the most amazing thing is, and this is not global. This is definitely a Western, richer sort of group. But many of the people who will be listening on this podcast, we have so much stuff that it's hard to find stuff within our stuff. I mean, that sort of illustrates it. If you think about it, it's insane. That's how much stuff we have. Like, it might be easier for you to just order the damn thing on Amazon than actually find it. Like, that's how much stuff that we have. And it used to be that we had much, much, much less. It was a much, much, much simpler time. And happiness levels really haven't changed since the 50s. So it's just not working for us.
Wow. So if someone was like kind of starting today, what would you tell them to do? Would you tell them to kind of take an inventory of their stuff? Like, what are sort of the steps that you would instruct people to do?
Yeah. Pick an area that it doesn't really matter, but it, could be tools or kitchenware or clothing or sports, or, pick an area and go through it. And just try to really evaluate what stuff have I used in the last 6 months, a year, 5 years, and that's and make sort of 3 piles. One sort of, yes, I'm absolutely going to keep this. No, I'm going to either donate, sell, or throw away or recycle. And maybe you have a maybe box that you throw a bunch of stuff in, write the date on it, and then, I don't know, 3 months later, 6 months later, if you can't remember what's in the box or you haven't had to go in the box, then you might ask yourself, how valuable is this stuff to me? And maybe that goes in the no box after that. So that's the way I would sort of evaluate our things. I mean, it's just like we move. The TED Talk, it has a box, and sort of I use that as just as an illustration that we move stuff from place to place. Like so many of us, I'm sure listening, know this. Like you end up, you want to edit your stuff before you move, but you just don't end up having time, or you don't make time to do it. And then you move with it. And so you got like unpacked boxes or stuff in storage, and you've had it for years, and you don't even know what's in it. It's like, how important could that stuff really be?
Right. Absolutely. I think a lot of people during the pandemic had to do a lot of relocating and moving. And it's so interesting. Like every time someone moves, you realize that most of the stuff in your house you're not using, and what a cathartic process, and also what an emotional process that is, right? Because I think people acquire stuff because maybe they don't want to deal with some of the emotional pieces of self. So it feels like it's a bit of a cover up. But it's so interesting. I love this topic so much. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about carbon offsets and a little bit of the work that you're doing with the Carbonauts. So first, can you tell our audience, because I think a lot of people listening in might be very new to the space or new to the concept of carbon offsets and sustainability. What are carbon offsets, and why should people listening care about them?
Sure. So I think that the first thing about offsets is offsets should be step number 2. First step is reduce. And so you really want to reduce your footprint as much as possible. Just like focus initially on that as much as possible, because that's the stuff that really matters. But offsets are meant to be, globally, if we looked at sort of how many emissions that we can have that such that global warming doesn't happen, it doesn't sort of increase, we probably have like 2 or 3 tons per person per year, 2 or 3 tons per person per year. People in India are around that. People in Europe are 5 to 8 tons. Americans, Australians, Canadians, Saudi Arabians, they're all going to be 16 to 18 tons. So way above what sort of the fair share is. And so what we want to do, and this is not to point fingers or to make anyone feel bad. We're all just sort of learning about how this all works and understanding, and we just want to start to move in the other direction as rapidly as we can. But basically, part of it is built into how your society functions, and that's a big part of why Europeans are so much lower than North Americans. They're just sort of different context. But it's really hard to get to zero, and really hard to get to two tons. And so offsets are really to help that. So you may not be able to do everything. You may not be able to get as low as you'd like. And so you can buy offsets. And so offsets basically either pay to prevent carbon from CO2 equivalents from going into the atmosphere, or actually sequester carbon into plant matter, rock matter, into underground or something like that. And so a carbon offset, you hear about tree planting is definitely one of them. That one can certainly work. So trees take carbon out of the air and sequester it in themselves. And but there are also many other forms of offsets. So for example, methane capture. We have these dumps where they emit methane, and there are ways of capturing it. And so that's a way. That's another offset. Refrigerant destruction is another one. All of our air conditioners and refrigerators eventually end up rotting away somewhere, hopefully in a landfill. but they have these really powerful refrigerants within them that are very powerful greenhouse gases that ultimately will escape at some point. So refrigerant destruction are basically these NGOs that will find them and destroy the refrigerants so that they never leak into the atmosphere. So offsets is a way that you can basically fund these projects that help prevent CO2 from ending up in the atmosphere, or actually sequester it. So you might hear about direct air capture. So that's one where it sort of vacuum up the air and then grab the carbon out of it and then sequester it in some manner. So it's so you want to put solar panels on your house or get renewable energy in some form via your utility. You want, if you drive, you want to drive electric. You want to move to a plant-rich diet. You want to reduce food waste. You want to do all those things to reduce. But you also want to buy offsets in order to help the overall calculation. And you want to make sure that they're really high quality ones. So they're third-party verifiers. And they're at the Carbonauts, we sort of help people understand this in more depth. But offsets are a great thing to support.
And so that was my next question: where can people buy them? Which is obviously your site explains this and more. But can you tell us more about the Carbonauts, why you created this, and what people can kind of learn from this platform?
Yeah, sure. So I was very fortunate to fall in love with the internet at a very young age and start a company in '95 that went very well. And so I made some money. I built and sold this company with my cousin in '95 to '98. And so I made some money at an early age, allowed me to be choosy about what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was environmental matters. And so I've been focused at it since 2000. In 2004, I built a site called Tree Hugger. It was basically, it's a tongue-in-cheek name, and it was basically the first sort of cool green website. Very positive, pro-business, bipartisan, design forward, and would really sort of help people see this beautiful green future. And it's still going today, which is awesome. And so I've been at this for a while, and what has really changed since I started Tree Hugger around 2004 is that awareness is really high. So people get it in a way that they really didn't before. The challenge is that the climate doesn't care about our awareness. The climate really doesn't care about our feelings. It cares about our actions. Ultimately, all this stuff is a physics question. We're putting too much carbon in the air. We're polluting too much. We're causing the destruction, elimination of species, that kind of stuff. And so it's about our actions. And so I just became obsessed with the idea of how do we move people from awareness to action. We can't get where we want to go unless people take up these incredible solutions that we're coming out with. So it still requires behaviors and people taking up these new solutions. And so that's really where the Carbonauts came from. And so we offer, I guess, big picture is the really good thing that's happened in the last bunch of years is big companies are making really aggressive commitments in terms of the environment. All of our institutions are sounding the alarm that we're in real trouble. We really got to do something. And corporations are reacting. And many of them are setting these really aggressive goals, which is awesome. And their sustainability departments are often understaffed and under budgeted. And they may have these commitments and a real strategy as to how they're going to get there. But the average person at a company, and really, globally, isn't really climate literate, doesn't really understand how things work, and isn't very enthusiastic about all this stuff, often because they're just not very confident in their knowledge and don't really necessarily know what to do. And so often you'll notice conversations about sustainability veer very quickly towards the magnetic topic of straws and packaging. And while we do need to fix recycling and do a better job on plastic and all that, it's a big problem. it is a tiny problem compared to the other things. So, on a personal level, you want to be thinking about your driving, your flying, your utilities. These are way, way bigger things than your recycling. And so, what we've sort of gone back to basics, and we work for very large companies: Amazon, Chanel, AT&T, News Corp, et cetera, et cetera. And we help move their cultures to cultures of sustainability, because if we need to help those under-resourced sustainability teams, we want to get their culture strategy. So you want to get their people on board, climate literate and enthusiastic. And so we teach these really engaging, cameras on virtual workshops in cohorts of 30, and we help people meet them where they are and help them understand how all this stuff works, and very specifically what actions they can take at home and at work in order to make a difference. And then we really encourage them to do that. So we help move cultures, and we help them get climate literate and climate enthusiastic.
That is so awesome, Graham. I'm so happy to hear that you're doing this, and I hope that many companies reach out to you after this interview. If you could also just share with us, an example of one of the companies that you've worked with, like if you've seen the outcome of some of these workshops, like what has kind of transpired. Maybe you can give like one example, like of how a company shifted their way of thinking, maybe on a very micro level or a macro level. I'd love to hear, an example.
Sure. Yeah. In general, I think the real heroes in our minds, and we literally create graphics around this to really celebrate the staff. Like the real heroes are the everyday people that take action. And so, someone who gets solar panels on their house, or signs up for renewable energy at their apartment, or starts to carpool, or changes their diet towards more of a plant-rich one, or really starts getting serious about food waste, or cuts a flight or two by packing some trips together. All these are actually really meaningful things. So we see this day in, day out with the staff that we educate and inspire. They start living a different life. And I would say another thing that's really, really important, and we try to support and inspire people to do, is to talk about it. So there's a real the way out of this is via social norms. So when we try to figure out what behavior we should have in sort of any area of our lives, we look around at people around us. We look at our friends, our family, the people we respect, and that's how we make our decisions. And so our challenge is to change the social norms, to make them not about having ginormous houses and using a ton of energy and flying a lot and eating a lot of meat, et cetera, but sort of the opposite. And so the sharing part is also very important.
I love those examples, and I'm just like thinking now, as you're sharing some of these examples, like ways that I could do that as well, and share that with my community. So I want to talk a little bit about this other TED Talk that you did on why you're a weekday vegetarian. I really enjoyed listening to that, and I was wondering if you could share kind of, why you spoke about this topic. You referenced cutting out meat, but can you share why?
Sure. So, I think it did really well. I think just because there's a sort of a core concept there. And I think that core concept can be applied to a lot of other areas. And the core concept is just don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And so, the weekday vegetarian talk was really, I was sort of looking at myself going like, what's going on? I know all this stuff, but why am I not a vegetarian? I know that meat, so meat has a tremendous impact, in particular beef and lamb, chicken and fish and suffer a lot less, and basically a lot of carbon is associated with them. They're really carbon intensive, and so it's important to try to lower your sort of your carbon diet, have a more carbon friendly diet. And so I sort of like, why am I'm not doing this? I know about animal cruelty. I know about the carbon aspects. I know about the health aspects. Like, there's so many reasons for me to do this, to go vegetarian. Why am I not doing it? And I realized that I'm probably a little bit of a rebel, and I don't like to be told what to do. That's probably part of it. But I think I was like, the thought of sort of my last steak, my last hamburger, was just hard to swallow, pardon the pun. And so as a result, I wasn't doing it. And I just realized, well, that's silly. Like, why? I'm letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And so the idea behind the Weekday Vegetarian was, don't let that happen. So if you can eat vegetarian for the week, even with a bunch of cheating here and there, you're still probably half a vegetarian. And I can much more easily envision a world that's people eating half as much meat as one where half of the world has become vegetarian. And so, yeah. And by the way, back in the 50s, our meat portions used to be a lot smaller. So you could eat meat the exact same frequency, but eat half the portions, and you'd be eating half as much meat. So there are various approaches you could take, but so that's the big idea, basically, and then eat whatever you want on the weekends. So I try to do that, often unsuccessfully, but it keeps me eating a lot less meat. And now that I know that beef and lamb are have much higher footprints than the other stuff, I try to really avoid them. And if I'm going to eat some beef, I try to make sure it's really tasty stuff and not just some crappy fast food hamburger kind of thing. And so don't let the perfect be an enemy of the good. That's the Weekday Vegetarian story.
Yeah, I think that's so practical for the time that we're in. And I really appreciate that, because it feels like right now we're in a world where there's so much polarity and so much orthodoxy around, like, taking a stance on things. And I think just being kind of reasonable with where people are at is great. So I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of us can try that, right? It's not, it's not overwhelming.
And make up your own. Like, so we do this in one of our workshops, write your own. So it's like, I don't know, Mark Bittman, I think it was vegan before 6. So, vegan for breakfast and lunch. And then maybe you eat some meat or animal products for dinner, or you only eat meat when you go out, or you only eat meat during the week, or whatever. Like, make up your own program. But the point is that you need to have some very clear boundaries. So if it's Tuesday night and you're going out to eat, or you're going to the supermarket, like, if you want to know whether you're being like, am I supposed to be eating meat or not? Like, what's the plan? You need to know when you're varying from it. And if you just set out with, I want to eat less meat, it's really hard to know whether you're being successful. So something with some good boundaries is important.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. So Graham, can you tell us about, like, what attracted you to this space, and why you wanted to really dedicate so much of your life to this world?
Well, interestingly, I think I sort of fell into it really from animal-oriented stuff. I think I read this book, Diet for a New America, by this guy, Tom Robbins or something, a long, long, long time ago. And I think that, in a way, started. But yeah, nature and animals is probably the big thing. And I think just kind of like I just have always really. I grew up in the country, and I've had cool parents that really helped us appreciate nature, and just sort of seeing what was happening with it just got me really interested in it. And there's this incredible way that we can live in sync with nature and with all the animals, and it's going to be a really beautiful thing, and it's just heart-wrenching to see what we're doing in many parts of the world, and also like just really heartening when you see great examples of it headed in the other direction. Like, we absolutely can live on this planet in perfect harmony, very, very successfully, and with high levels of happiness, much higher than we have now, I would suggest. And we've just sort of we've gotten confused that somehow space and stuff and money is the stuff that make us happy, and it's clearly not.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. So, what about the pandemic, Graham? Like, what have you noticed, coming out of the pandemic, that maybe shifted your perception on this work, or maybe kind of shifted your perception about where it's going?
Well, it's been tough, tough times. Yeah. How's the pandemic? I mean, there's so much that has happened in the last few years. The polarization of politics in such a massive way, I think largely attributable to social media and the algorithms and all that. It caused a lot of us to really question things. I think it people spent a lot more time at home, and so it probably people think about their relationships. It certainly fractured a lot of situations, and a lot of people moved and are now working from home and moved more out into nature, which is really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's a so many things changed. I don't know. I won't lie. I sort of view it as very, very messy now. We've got a lot of very big challenges. Just like the polarization and social media is just mind blowing. I mean, just like seeing in the U.S. and maybe those not in the U.S. missed this whole thing, but basically there came from the government came a recommend that's currently under a Democratic president came a recommendation that perhaps we should consider moving away from gas stoves, and because basically gas stoves leak methane into your home, which is not good stuff to breathe and not good for your kids. It's like basic science, and it's just like facts. It also gas stoves emit have really high emissions, and there's a fantastic replacement at this point, which are induction stoves that are safer, don't have any of those gases, save you money, have lower footprint, and yet somehow it became politicized and in a ridiculous way. So what's terrifying for me is just how we seem to be ending up. We're just looking for ways to fight with the quote unquote other side, and it's very immature on both sides, and really is not a way to help. It's just not a smart way for us to live.
Right.
So yeah, I don't have a super positive answer about where the pandemic led us. I'm not sure. I don't know if it helped much. It helped us work at home. That's positive, I think. It helped people sort of focus on their relationships. A lot of people got more interested in living out in the country. So yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure on the whole whether it was a great thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a mixed bag of things.
Yeah.
I've sort of felt like it exposed a lot of things underneath the surface that have now been brought to the surface. But I was just curious, like, if people were actually contributing more to the sustainability world or less post COVID, and how just even companies have been perceiving Carbonauts post pandemic versus pre pandemic, and if there's been any kind of shift.
Well, we pretty much started 3 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, so we haven't really known the difference, I guess. So yeah, haven't really seen overall sustainability. We we lowered our flying for a bit. Listen. It's a mixed bag. There's some fantastic news, like just the fact that companies are making really aggressive sustainability goals is fantastic. Like it used to be that it was like 2050 which is so far out that it's basically meaningless in my opinion, but they've changed them. Now it's 2040, 2030, 2025. Like that's very positive. And there's so much money going into EVs and batteries and renewable energy and meat replacement products and all this stuff. Like it definitely is. It is very exciting. You can definitely find fantastic news all over in terms of products and services that are going to help us get there. The Inflation Reduction Act, it's not where we need it to be, but it is a gigantic leap forward. And so there is a lot of good news around. There's no doubt, and I'm not sure if the pandemic helped that or not, but there's definitely good news out there.
I love that. Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that as well. It seems, that policies have also been shifting for the better. So we'll see, I guess, where we're going. Graham, what things have surprised you the most looking back on your journey?
I guess it's not surprising, but it just like that there is a status quo bias, and just realizing how strong that is. Like, I chose a very difficult area. I'm in behavior change. Carbonauts is in behavior change. It's tricky. So we're really focused on behavior science, and we are pulling every trick in the book to help understand, to get people to change and really to make change. So, I probably surprised 23 years in as to sort of how how slow it's been, and how people are. I don't know. I like to try to keep things positive, but it's a mixed bag, and I think it's often surprising to me how easily people are able to rationalize their behaviors despite having so much information to the contrary.
Right.
So just people that have the money, that have the knowledge, and yet aren't buying electric cars. They're people that are buying a brand new gas car, just like that kind of thing. Just I find it sort of mind blowing. Yeah.
Right.
Which makes me really nervous. So it's all about the social norms. So somehow I think that also illustrates where we're at. It's just like it's we're not at the point where it's embarrassing to buy a gas car, so people do.
Right.
And we should be.
Right.
We certainly have the information. And listen, if you don't drive, or you don't have the money to buy an electric car, I totally get that. That's one thing. But if you do and you have the knowledge, it's very. I guess I'm surprised at how little quote unquote sacrifice people are willing to make. That's sort of mind blowing. And it's all kinds of people. Then you've got other people on the other end of the continuum who are really willing to do a ton. And there's some incredible examples out there of people like just imagine like stopping flying entirely. But someone like Peter Kalmus, climate scientist, that's what he's done. And it's and I think we can look at these people and think, oh, those are extremists, like that's crazy. But if you really sit back for a second and listen to what literally all of our institutions are telling us, like we are in an absolute climate emergency. Like for people like, I don't know, getting worked up about those sort of quote unquote extremists, throwing some soup on a plastic covering of some famous piece of art, and it's getting all, it's, if you just read the stuff and listen to it, it's pretty clear as to where we're at. So
right.
So it's hard to do sense making in today's world. It's really hard to figure out where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Graham, what about some books or resources that have inspired you on this path? Who do you really look up to?
So, there are a bunch of key books that really got me on the path, and at this point they're probably old. But Natural Capitalism was one. That's like the Levins, Amory and Hunter Levins, I believe, and Paul Hawken. Fantastic book. And then I really got into science and nature reading, and I think in a way that's often the most powerful. Like I think if helping people love the animals, flora and fauna, I think it's really powerful. So like there are that series of best of. I know you have an international audience, but I'm sure that these would be great as well. The best of American science and best of American science and nature and best of American nature. They're like basically collect articles from the year, and those are fantastic. I read the Overstory, was a fiction book, which has a lot of trees in it, which makes it sound super boring. It's incredible. So I'd love to see more fiction like that. And I think like watch the Pollen books, Michael Pollan, Botany of Desire, and all those I think are really powerful. I haven't read it yet, but Sweetgrass, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
People are raving about that one. And I think, watching stuff is good too. My Octopus Teacher was really,
So
really, really
good.
powerful. But I think things that just help you fall in love with nature and animals and trees and realize that we're just part of this incredible thing is powerful, because that's the stuff that we want to protect, and you protect what you love. So I encourage anything along that. Beak of the Finch was very inspiring to me. I went to the Galapagos in 2000, and so it's a book about this couple called the Grants that live on the Galapagos, and basically weaves in the story of evolution as Darwin sort of figured it out, and that was pretty inspiring. And yeah, so I guess science and nature reading, and it sounds boring, but if it may sound boring to some, but I assure you that there's some fantastic writing out there.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. I've read some of those books, but I'll take a look at the other ones. So, Graham, we're coming at time. What do you want to tell our listeners about their health and wellness and well-being? What's sort of your main takeaway on the work that you're contributing to the world?
Well, I mean, I just would encourage your listeners to do their part. I think we all understand viscerally what's happening, and it's very much within our power to get out of this and move to a beautiful green future where we live in harmony with each other and with the animals and the plants, and we can absolutely do this. But it sort of takes everyone getting on board and taking action and talking about it and doing things. And we have incredible solutions. You can switch to renewable energy in many, many places around the planet in about 10 minutes with a phone call. There's electric transportation options of all sort, including public transportation and bicycles, and there's plant-rich diet. So there's all sorts of things that you can do that really can change things up and can help build momentum around us living in this new way, including just talking about the stuff that you're doing and asking questions. And so I just really encourage people to do that. And there's stuff that you can do at home. There's stuff that you can do at work, which is also fantastic. You can join your green team, find out how you can contribute and come up with ideas for your company and just be supportive. And then there's your society. I think protesting is really appropriate at this time. Getting involved, joining an environmental group, one of the NGOs, and just finding something that you're passionate about and getting involved. And then getting involved in the political process and getting the jokers out of politics that aren't supporting this just very basic, smart way of looking at our future and planning for it. We need to have a sustainable future, or we will no longer be here. And so supporting those is really important. Joining an NGO, doing stuff in your neighborhood. So there are so many ways that you can contribute, and it can be fun, and it's going to make you feel better, because most of you know viscerally that you could do more, and you can do more. And once you start doing it, it feels good. So I encourage that. And if any of you work for large companies, would love to hear from you. We do some great work for them, and would love to help move your cultures, get people climate literate and climate enthusiastic, and really helping the company move towards its sustainability goals, which is going to help our overall society get there. Corporations are incredibly important in this whole picture.
Yes, amazing, amazing. And where can people find you? Where can they sign up for some of the things that you mentioned? What's the best website?
The website is thecarbonauts.com, so plural, thecarbonauts.com. So if you search the plural of Carbonauts, you will find us. And I'm just Graham, Graham, at thecarbonauts.com if you want to reach out. And would love to. And we have We Are the Carbonauts is our Instagram. And I'm on Mr. Graham Hill on LinkedIn. Those are probably the spots. I'll love to hear from you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Graham. This was so lovely and very inspiring. And just thank you so much for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Yasmin. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for doing all the great work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about how to be a steward of the earth with Graham Hill, and you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.